Hello guys! Today I have some hint to improve your think How to Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill.
Part 14. How to Outwit the 6 Ghosts of Fear. Thought impulses of fear and poverty cannot be translated into terms of courage and financial gain. The 6 basic fears. Fears are nothing more than states of minds. In order to implement the 13 success principles effectively, you must extinguish 3 enemies that thwart the system's functioning: indecision, doubt, and fear. These 3 negative states of mind are interrelated. Indecision hardens into doubt, which then becomes fear. They are extremely insidious because they attack the subconscious and as such often grow while resisting detection. Although they are intangible forces that exist only in the mind, they wreak more havoc on humankind than any real enemy. In order of most to least common, the 6 basic fears are fear of poverty, fear of criticism, fear of ill health, fear of loss of love, fear of old age, and fear of death. Any other fear not listed can be categorized into one of these broader groups. The first 3 are responsible for most of the worries in the world, but the dominance of one or more fears in society is a cyclical phenomenon. Times of recession augment the fear of poverty, while times of pandemic heighten the fear of ill health and death. The potency of these fears is great for the same reason that the steps to riches in this book are so effectual. Thought impulses that are heavily emotionalized seek outlet in physical form. In other words, if you focus on or allow into your mind fears, you will be actively working to realize them. And remember, both actively and passively received thoughts can permeate the subconscious to compel it to act. So the failure to control your thoughts by feeding your subconscious only positive thoughts while filtering out destructive ones received from the environment is just as bad as using the principle of autosuggestion against yourself. It is entirely within an individual's control to regulate his or her mind and to admit only constructive impulses. 1. Fear of poverty. Verdict. The fear of poverty is the most destructive of the 6 basic fears because it is the most difficult to master. Sources. This fear derives from the tendency of some avaricious human beings to take advantage of others for their own economic gain, especially during difficult economic times, and the suffering that poverty entails, including the blow to one's ego that it causes. Result. A willingness to accept poverty sends you on a one-way journey toward that end. Symptoms: indifference, lack of ambition, indecision, not thinking for oneself, doubt, making excuses for one's failures, worry, negativity directed toward oneself, often resulting in self-destructive behaviors like overspending and intemperance, and others in the form of criticism. Overcautiousness, focusing on chances of failure and hesitating to act. 2. Fear of criticism. Verdict. The fear of criticism destroys one's creative faculties, one's ability to think for oneself, and one's initiative. Providing criticism does nothing but sow fear and resentment. Love and constructive feedback, on the other hand, yield a growth mindset. Sources. This fear derives in part from the tendency of some human beings to take away what others have earned and then to justify their actions by finding fault in their character. It is particularly prominent in individuals whose parents were highly critical of them in childhood, causing them to develop an inferiority complex. Refer to Part 4 for how to overcome this. Result. In its smaller forms, it manifests as a compulsion to conform to the norms and styles of the day. On a grander scale, it leads to a fear of openly questioning doctrine and dominant narratives. Symptoms: self-consciousness, social awkwardness and shyness, meekness, body language and vocal intonation resulting from nervousness around others, indecision, inability to form opinions and express firm positions. Inferiority complex, overcompensating with personal appearance and other means of self-presentation to impress others whose loss one fears. Extravagance, spending beyond one's means to conform to the norms and styles of the day. Lack of initiative, hesitation to take action. Lack of ambition, succumbing to temporary defeat too readily, and a general laziness toward personal and professional achievement. 3. Fear of ill health. Verdict: this fear is closely related to the fear of old age and the fear of death. All three come from humans facing their mortality. Sources: the primary source is the fear of one's fate after death and the economic toll that ill health may impose. This fear can be exacerbated by those who falsely sell health or promise cure-alls and preventative effects through their products. Result: this fear often produces the physical symptoms of the feared disease because people can be made ill or helped to recover by means of suggestion. Disease can begin as a negative thought impulse. Symptoms: addiction to health fads, always seeking out panaceas, fad diets, exercise regimes, and other therapeutic experimentation without professional guidance. Hypochondria, concentrating on perceived symptoms to the point of experiencing them as real. Weakened immune system, reduced bodily resistance toward disease by creating favorable conditions for it to grow. Self-indulgence, babying oneself because of perceived or expected illness and using this as an excuse for failure or lack of ambition. Intemperance, abusing alcohol and narcotics to attack the symptoms of ill health rather than the causes. 4. Fear of loss of love. Verdict: the fear of loss of love is the most painful of the 6 basic fears. Source: this fear derives from the tendency of some human beings to seek the affections and attention of others' mates and the tendency of some to succumb to such efforts. Result: the most common result is a state of jealousy. Symptoms: jealousy, constantly being suspicious of friends and loved ones and suspecting infidelity without just cause. Fault-finding, being hypercritical of everyone, erratic interactions with money, gambling, stealing, cheating both to make oneself feel ahead of the curve and to impress loved ones whose loss one fears. Adultery, cheating on a partner because one fears that he or she will be unfaithful. 5. Fear of old age. Verdict: the fear of old age grows as one gets older. Sources: this fear owes its origins to the fear, embedded now in our genes, that old age will bring poverty, and the fear, inspired by religion, of the world to come. On a less historical level, this fear can derive from a distrust of those seeking an inheritance, the possibility of ill health, the fear of diminished sexual appeal or activity, and concerns over the loss of one's economic and physical freedom. Result: it can sometimes lead to immaturity and a debilitating nostalgia. Symptoms: midlife crisis, sudden onset of immaturity in one's middle years, for example 40s, that results from a fear of having passed one's quote-unquote best years. Inferiority complex, thinking and speaking less of oneself because of one's age, thinking one is slipping. Settling, failing to act on one's dreams or use one's imagination because of false thoughts that one is too old to learn or do anything new. 6. Fear of death. Verdict: modern science and higher education have freed many men from the terrors of the fear of death. Sources: the primary source is a fear of hellfire or nothingness, depending on one's religious beliefs or lack thereof. Result: If one can accept death as a reality, the thought can be passed out of the mind so that one can focus on service to others and a burning desire for achievement, which are the greatest cures for the fear of death. Recognize that life is energy, and as such, following nature's laws, it cannot be created or destroyed. View death simply as another transition. Symptoms: inaction, indecision or laziness resulting from a focus on death rather than being present in one's life. Hoarding, a fear of poverty and leaving one's family without resources that manifests in hoarding behavior. Religious fanaticism, getting carried off by extreme religious doctrine as a way to make oneself feel more prepared for death. Worry. The 6 basic fears become translated into a state of worry through indecision. Worry is a state of mind that results from fear. It occurs when a fear has become so embedded in the subconscious that it
unsettles the mind, making one feel helpless and unable to make decisions. It destroys self-confidence and reduces an individual's ability to take action on his or her dreams. Worrying results in 4 negative consequences that should be avoided. The destructive thought impulses are transmitted to others. Worrying paralyzes both the reasoning faculty, the synthetic imagination, and the creative imagination. The fear embeds itself in the subconscious and works to produce its physical equivalent. Worrying produces a negative, unpleasant personality. The cure for worry is decision. The fear of poverty can be cured by making the decision to make do with whatever financial resources one has. The fear of criticism can be cured by making the decision not to care about what other people think, say, or do. The fear of ill health can be cured by making the decision to seek and trust medical professionals for care when one experiences any symptoms. The fear of loss of love can be cured by making the decision to live a fulfilling, meaningful life with or without a romantic partner. The fear of old age can be cured by making the decision to accept the aging process. The fear of death can be cured by making the decision to accept one's mortality. The general habit of worrying can be cured by deciding that nothing is worth the price it brings. The 7th basic evil. Without doubt, the most common weakness of all human beings is the habit of leaving their minds open to the negative influence of other people. An evil so great that it exists on an entirely different plane than the 6 basic fears is the susceptibility to negative influences. These influences can come from within yourself, from your own predispositions and tendencies, or from others. We are most susceptible to negative suggestions that harmonize with our own weaknesses. For remember, like attracts like. The most profound weakness of humankind is that we have a habit of leaving our minds open to the negative influences of other people. Because these influences are so insidious, often working at the subconscious level to attack our ambition and faith in ourselves, they can be extremely difficult to detect. And even when we do recognize them, we find it difficult to confront them so that they can be corrected. To protect yourself from this evil, you must harness the force of willpower. Work to construct a fortress around your subconscious mind by using the conscious mind to actively identify and filter out destructive sensory stimuli. Keep away from negative, discouraging people and instead surround yourself with people who encourage you to think and act for yourself. Don't get caught up in the downward spiral of excuses for one's shortcomings. If does not explain away failure, it only evidences a lack of responsibility for one's life and results. Action item: create a mental environment for success. Use the inventory of the 6 basic fears and 7th basic evil to assess which ghosts are haunting your mind. Approach this survey openly and honestly. Which symptoms can you identify in your own life? With which fears do you struggle the most? Based on your personal assessment, make a decision and a plan of action for eliminating each enemy so that you have a mental environment that is highly conducive to implementing this success philosophy in its entirety.
Thanks, you guys, for pay attention. Please support me by like and subscribe. Good luck!